Here we are at the midpoint of the year, and it feels like a perfect point to have our guest come back and join us for a quarterly update. It is Frank Gleeson, President and CEO of NACS. And, obviously, us on staff, we know you well, you're around, we're learning more about the dynamics of you leading NACS. But we also want to have these check-ins regularly to just kind of share what you're seeing, both in talking to staff and talking to folks on the road about NACS and where we have gone this year and where we're going the rest of the year and future years. So thanks for joining us today and taking the time. And like I said, let's start. I had mentioned getting to know staff and talking more while you've been connected to NACS for 2 decades. You're newer in leading NACS. What are some of the dynamics that you've seen in spending time here at the NACS headquarters and learning more behind the scenes in how NACS operates as a business?
Yeah, Jeff, it's been an incredible 6 months, 3 months, 3 weeks. There's just so much learning, interactions, not just with staff, but everybody. But I'll start there, and while I've been around NACS for 20 years, until you're actually in here in DC in the office in Alexandria, every day, every other day, you don't get a feel for the quality, the commitment, the passion of the people until you're working with them. And my report card back would be extraordinarily strong. We're a high performance organization with very committed and talented people who work diligently on behalf of the industry every single day. And, I've met everybody in person, as you know. I've had all the kind of one-on-ones with the senior folks. I've had all the next level skip down meetings. I've attended quite a few of the group sessions and all of our different committee meetings. So I've been very deep, or as I would call it, high, wide, and deep in the organization. So I can honestly say it's a great organization with great people that really, really represent our industry strongly.
So a lot of our members will be gathering in October, and they will say, "See you at NACS." And yes, we love when they say "See you at NACS" because they mean the NACS show. But really, when they say "See you at NACS," it should mean coming to visit us in Alexandria, and whether it's in a committee meeting or some other event. I think it's super important. The NACS show, amazing. It'll drive your business, return on insight, return on investment, return on inspiration, all of those things. But coming to the NACS office and meeting people, I think, is really a great experience when you see people on committees come here and say, wow, I had no idea, because they do associate us in many cases with 4 days in October. And it's much more broad than that.
Yeah, there's no doubt our flagship event is the NACS show, and that's where we get, tens of thousands of people to come together and learn, network, show off new products, drive the industry forward. But NACS is a whole lot more than that, Jeff. If you just look at this year so far, we've had 12 industry update events around the country. We've been as far as Vancouver and Washington State. We've been down in Costa Mesa, California. We've been down in Tampa. We've been all over, right? Sharing the message, about what NACS does in smaller, more intimate locations with, members in local states and local companies. We've also had some big signature events. Our State of the Industry, which is hugely well attended and highly rated, is our barometer of what's going on. And you've obviously had a podcast about that, and it's well worth a listen because there's very rich information that will help your business and help you move the needle, particularly in some challenging times that we see today. And then there's a lot of other, whether they're leadership events, Leadership for Success, or Education Series, which is coming up. We obviously have a great leadership event in Miami, which, most of the senior folks of the bigger companies have come to. And then a lot of other committee meetings, because most of our agenda comes from our committee meetings, which are representative of our business. We've had a lot of them here in either DC, or we've had them at the regional events. And that's a very rich place to get, what's going on and what are the issues and what can we do about it.
Now, we have all these meetings, and you are at all of these meetings largely. A lot of travel. You're also visiting people. We have supplier members. We represent their best interests related to retail. But as an industry, when we lobby, we represent retailer needs. They are usually lockstep, both of them. But, it's also important to say that there sometimes is a delineation. You were at the supplier board meeting recently in Harrisburg. So there's two elements of that. One is, what are they saying about the industry? Our supplier members that are committed to our industry, how are they talking about retail in general and how NACS is leading in our industry?
Yeah, I mean, listen, our supplier partners are exactly that. They're our partners, and I feel quite strongly about this, that, working together with the retail community, we can be stronger. So we've had and have a very strong supplier board with some retail members on it. We've got a good representation across all the different categories that we would work with. And I had the pleasure of briefing them on my first 6 months, talking about the next 5 years, our strategy and our plans, talking and going into some of the issues. And I see quite a few opportunities, Jeff, is how I would describe them, and issues that we need to address. So aside from credit card competition, which we're working hard on, we might pick that up later, there's tremendous change in some categories, big categories for our industry. And I have visited the manufacturing and distribution companies that are largely responsible for a lot of these categories in their home, in their headquarters, to get a feel and educate me and the team around how can we collectively work together. And I'm a huge believer in collaboration, as you know, particularly when our objectives align, and they have to align. So you take a couple of them. The first one is nicotine. It's been raised by my board as a significant issue and a threat to our C-stores. There's been a prevalence of illicit product coming in. It's hurting farming here, it's hurting manufacturing, and it's hurting retail. And we need to collectively bring everybody together to solve it, because it's a social issue, and it's a social issue that the C-store business has been managing for years. So we've been managing the sale of cigarettes. We know how to sell age-restricted products. We have an amazing digital product with TruAge. So we can bring and amplify the voice of both the supplier, the farming to a large degree, and then the retailers who are responsible to get nicotine and the change in nicotine in a good spot. So that's one that we will talk a lot about this year, one that everyone's concerned about because of the societal change. The other one then is around the change in consumer habits, and people are hurting a little bit, Jeff, in terms of the gallon. The price of gallon's gone up. There's less money in some people's pockets. So there's some trips issues. There's definitely some, pressures around affordability. So I think as we think about that, how do we maintain value for money? How do we maintain, the position, obviously, that, obviously our retailers aren't the ones making all the money on fuel. We get the last 5% out of the till, right? So that's the last people to get paid and the smallest amount of money. So you've been done a really nice job about making sure our voice is heard and that message is clearly communicated. Of course, we want more trips. We are tremendous value. And I've been visiting a lot of sites, and I'd like you to ask me about that later. We have managed to cross into a concept called We Are Convenience. And you and I have discussed this. Our locations in our towns, villages, and cities are perfect for refueling your vehicle, refueling your body, restocking on things you've worked out or you've run out of, and then creating a place for people to go where they get some human interaction and actually meet people that might smile at them, thank them, and then recirculate that money in the local community by paying wages. So I'm hugely enthused by the role we play in society and the role we will play in society going forward.
That's a great point. And PBS did a video this week, public broadcasting. It's about 9 minutes long. And it features this woman named Kate Medley, who came out with a book last year, said, "Thank you, come again." It was about taking pictures in the South of the importance of gas stations and convenience stores in small communities. And this episode's 9 minutes long. Google it for anybody out there. It's well worth your time. Features two families. and not only showcases that their family business is and what our industry means to them, but what their business means to the community. And it is exactly everything you said. It's a place for people to come in every day, catch up with each other, particularly in these small towns. And as we talk about 91,000 single store operators in our industry, this is a video we should walk into every member of Congress's office and say, watch this video with me for 9 minutes. It's absolutely fantastic. So we had nothing to do with that. That just came out, and it's an amazing piece, but it showcases what you have talked about, what I have talked about, what we've all talked about as an industry about what we mean in communities. And it's so amazing when you see others embrace exactly what we've been saying.
No, 100%. And I'll give you two great examples. I mean, listen, I've just been down in Knoxville, right, visiting our great friends, Bill Weigel and his team, Doug and Beth and all the guys. They are a perfect example of a family-owned business that has become a world-class convenience, fuel, and food retailer. I've never seen anything as good. It's extraordinary, right? And the passion of all the people, all the store employees. I love to go talk to everybody. Can't help it. But, when you talk to Bill and then you talk to the cashiers or the chefs in the kitchens, they love their business, they love their communities, and they're doing an amazing job. And I can see why companies like Weigel's are winning. I can see, why companies like Casey's are winning when, they've got incredible strategy, great execution, extraordinary investment. And then last week, I had the pleasure of going down to Greenville, and I'd never been to Knoxville or Greenville, so I didn't know what to expect, but I met the great Stuart Spinks, right? We spent some amazing time with him, 87 years of age. He's still active in the business. He's got a son, Steve, and a great team around him. But we went to visit some of his amazing stores. And then we went to visit a new concept store that he had just come up with. Haley and the team had built in downtown Greensville, which was like a neighborhood store without gas, but it was way more than that. It was like gifting. They had outdoor seating. It was a cool place. I mean, if I lived there, I'd probably go there 3 times a day, get my breakfast, get my lunch, and then I'd go down in the evening and have, a glass of wine even, or just hang out, So I think we've got so much innovation, and so many examples, of businesses that have built up over long number of years. And then there's the smaller guys. I've met some single store guys. You've seen them on the Ideas to Go, and we'll see them actually at the NACS show. We've got some great examples of some are doing it with one store, some are doing it with thousands of stores, some are doing it with hundreds of stores. But one thing is certain for me, our channel is growing, expanding, and improving, and that will continue. And NACS's job is to help everybody with that. That's why we have these sessions. That's why we have our events. That's why we have the NACS show. That's why we have Ideas to Go. We're here to help everybody do well. And I think that's the essence of what NACS is all about, Jeff.
Yeah, 2 things there. First, I'll start with the idea of NACS is there to help you do well. To a great extent, all of us at NACS wear 2 hats. One is the broader hat, which is let's celebrate the industry and let's make sure everybody understands that our industry is special. It's special, communicate that message to suppliers, to customers, to everybody. So we're super cheerleaders for the industry. And then within the industry, we want to tell people about the NACS story. So there's really 2 elements that we're constantly thinking about. And I would not define that as difficult. I would define that as more enjoyable because it gives us 2 different things to, if you will, brag about and to celebrate. And I think that makes our jobs that much more impactful and more enjoyable.
Yeah, let me double down on that for you. So obviously our industry is a very, very, very progressive industry, not just North America, but globally. And you've got excellence of operation, you've got excellence of innovation everywhere I look, and it's exciting. And while I'm an optimist, I'm a realist too, Jeff. I've run some big businesses globally, and I can tell you right now, I haven't been this excited in a role probably since my teens. Right? So it's super. The second thing I want to really double down for you is we have an important role to play advocating and looking around corners and making sure that our members are well placed and they're well represented. And there's nothing more important than our government relations function, highly effective up in Capitol Hill. I've been up there on several times now, trying to amplify some of our messages and talk with the legislators and the people who will be making decisions around our business environment to make sure that they understand our issues, they understand the role we play, and more importantly, they actually create that level playing field where we can compete fairly and we can give value for money to our consumers. And then we can, as we do, collect a lot of tax for government and make sure that we play a role in society, whether that's, preventing underage abuse of products or use of products, because we know how to do it. We've been doing it for 100 years next year, Jeff, 100 years next year. NACS has been supporting the industry for 60 plus years. And I'm so proud to be the fourth guy in that's hopefully going to help support our industry for however long you want me around, Jeff.
Well, I hope it's a while. But you touched upon the 100 years. Next year, the industry will be 100 years old. It started 7-Eleven with Southland Ice Company and evolved from there. And all along the way, it was about innovation. And going back to your two recent visits with two industry icons, Stuart Spinks and Billy Weigel. Billy's first NACS show, I think, was 1965. And he talked to, I read something years ago in a publication. He said the value of NACS membership is worth $1 million to me. And I read that. So I saw him at the NACS show. I invoiced him for $1 million because, that seemed like a fair trade. He stamped it, paid, and mailed it back to me. He didn't enclose a check. So very, very smart man. But what I think is so interesting, and it is not unique to them, is they were icons that really built the modern convenience store business. Weigel's came from the dairy side. Spinks, they started more as convenience, added all these other elements, but they're still innovating. They're still, if you look at Weigel's today compared to Weigel's 10 years ago, dramatic difference. If you look at that market store that Spinks opens, dramatic difference. And the idea that industry icons still leading their companies to a large extent are saying, focus on the customer, reinvent convenience, continue to evolve, because that's how we win. We have to figure out two things. We have to figure out, how do we stand for something and be known for something? And then how do we continue to advance that? It's a challenge, but when you do it well, like you saw in the last 2 weeks, it's extraordinary what the payoff is.
Yeah, let me try and unpack two of those. So most recent one obviously was Bill. And, Bill's built that business essentially from a dairy business, and they were trying to solve their problem about how do they deal with a crisis, which was when they had this crisis, around selling their product. And he opened his first store. Now I just visited his purpose-built central production kitchen, where they're trying to drive quality, efficiency. I think the big decision he made a couple of years ago was, he brought in Doug Yarbury, who's really brought a level of efficiency and professionalism and consistency, to that business. And I was actually hard pressed to see how I could improve it personally, having worked for 40 years across a lot of companies. But I was enormously proud that the owner of that business was still fairly actively involved, and everybody knew. And it was just a very beautiful thing to see, and no surprise that they're winning to me, no surprise that they're leading to me at all. Then a week ago, I'm with Stuart Spinks, who built a business from an oil business, right? So a different place. Mm-hmm. But yet his last store open has no fuel at all. It's a standalone convenience store. So the innovation, or the breadth of innovation, or the willingness to change or evolve, and I do call it evolution, these companies have evolved through continuous improvement and innovation. I'm not surprised that they're highly profitable, highly successful. I'm not surprised that we have companies like Sheetz expanding significantly, family business again, built from, a small business. Wawa, the same. Rudders. We were up at Rudders actually at the supply meeting again. The innovation up in Rudders is world class. They've won the Food Convenience Award because they were the best. They're putting in sports bars, gambling, a whole lot of services their customers want. So I see it, and then I think back to when I met Alain Bouchard, one of my first probably couple of months in NACS, and he told me a story. He built his empire from one store. So I think the ambition for everybody in our industry should be, do the best you can do. Start with 1, get 2, 3, 5, 10. You get to 100, you could get to 1,000. Who the hell knows, right? The opportunity exists if you work hard and you're willing to try to be the best you can be, learn from others, share. But ultimately, you got to be able to understand the consumer. And I think that's where NACS can help. We're looking around the corner to help our industry understand the changes. We're going to try and improve a couple of things in the next few years, Jeff, around data. We're going to definitely try and improve our ability to sell products legally, whether it's, any age restricted, or even SNAP. I mean, I'm super annoyed about SNAP at the moment that they won't let us sell hot food and this turmoil. We're in every town and village. We are the closest consumer. We actually are potentially the answer when there's disasters or there's food deserts. So we can't get locked out of any programs where consumers want to buy our products. And I know we're selling fresh food today. I actually had some chicken that's better than any of the QSR or any of the chicken I made in Armour this week, right? This week in one of our convenience stores, Weigels. It was awesome.
And I think we talked about some issues, like how do we move over the years from 20 years ago, anytime gas prices went up, there were always issues like, why are retailers doing this? Now, we still get that, but not to the level we got it 20 years ago. And talk about, like, we jokingly call it the 10-year overnight success because you have to stay at it. We've done the same thing around nutrition where 10, 20 years ago, much, much different image about the industry, and convenience stores were thought of more as a place where, okay, nothing else is open, I'll go get something here. And now it's a destination where it's not only a comparable with QSRs, it's beating them in terms of quality. So as we continue to exhibit these world-class attributes, more customers will notice, more videos on PBS and elsewhere will showcase what we do. We'll get there. But we have these immediate things now, like you're saying, about SNAP and about Credit Card Competition Act that we also want to push through because, they're vital to our industry as competition is everywhere for the convenience customer. And all we want is a fair crack at it because there are so many ways we can help communities and customers if we're able to have that level playing field.
Listen, I'll use the credit card as an example for you, Jeff. I really want to bring this point home. We're going to need everybody to step up this year to help us push this across the line. We've got the White House and Trump on board. Senator Marshall and Durbin done amazing work, but it's grossly unfair, and I'll give you the comparison to Europe. In the US, on average, you're paying, or the retailers are paying 2.3% or more, right, to MasterCard and Visa in a monopoly situation. In Europe, where I have come from last year, and this, is 0.3. That's a 2 percentage points margin hit for our retailers and ultimately consumers paying more for no justification. So we have to educate legislators that this is unfair. It's actually something that needs to get addressed. And we have to, in a world of competition and a country of competition, right, we have to have a fair playing field on credit card fees. It's our second largest expense item. The other point and this is my more optimistic point, I actually think the food we're making is changed dramatically, right? Fresh food, fresh ingredients, the reformulation of a lot of our packaged beverage, the work that the manufacturers are doing about taking artificial dyes out, the need for more protein and the change in formulation that consumers want. Our channel is very well placed to deliver that, like super well placed. And you cannot compare us to 10 or 20 years ago It's an utterly different business now. And I'm not surprised to see the headlines in Bloomberg that want to get the best food, go to a C-store. You want to get some products and services, go to a C-store. I mean, even you want to get stimulating products like nicotine. I mean, nicotine of the future, OTPs, is nothing like cigarettes. We know that the science backs up. It's a safer product that people want to enjoy. And we're all responsible adults. If you're over 21, you should be allowed to enjoy those products, and buy them legally in a place where that money gets recirculated in the local economy, where we know, the profits aren't going to China with the illicit products, or they're not going to be damaging to our kids' health, or we don't even know what's in them, right? So I think we've got a number of things that NACS is going to work hard on this year, Jeff, on behalf of our industry. And I'm super clear, having been out for 6 months, I have a reasonable grasp on the issues. I just need to galvanize the support of all the members and vendors together. And that's why an opportunity to talk on this podcast is just great timing. And thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Well, I normally end there, but I just have one final follow-up question, because I know the answer to this. When we were talking about credit card fees, you said they're about 2.3% here in the U.S. and they're about 0.3% in Europe. The number one argument the credit card companies say is, well, you're gonna lose all your rewards. You're gonna lose all those things. Has anybody in Europe lost their rewards, even though their credit card fees are 2% lower?
No, and there's not any extra fraud. That's all lies, right? So I've been up on the hill and say, okay, what are credit card companies saying? I said, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. Here's the truth, right? They're gouging the American public and the American retailers with no justification, just because they can. And that is not the American way. We have to deal with it this year, Jeff. And the team, you've got a great team here in GR, but we do rely on grassroots, right? So I'm trying to amplify that voice so that everybody is speaking in unison, saying the same thing. We have to fix a cost that's unfair. We know from the Durbin Amendment on debit, largely speaking, those cost reductions got passed on to the consumer. That's a fact. We can prove that. So we've been able to demonstrate the credit card arguments are flawed and lies. And we have, in my view, a strong moral and a factual position that we can defend. We just need to communicate it strongly and then get it across the line. And that's the target.
So part of our role over the next couple of months is when we say, we need you now. And we've said it in the past, and there's opportunities. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. When we say we need you, respond. Because if you respond, if our industry responds and their voice is heard, we will win this. So we'll end up on that positive note. And as we start our third quarter, we have a lot more work to get done. We'll start the fourth quarter. We'll talk to you right before the NACS show, and we'll see you a lot more on the road, in the office, and in making our industry and our association a better place. So thanks for joining us again today, Frank.
Thank you, Jeff.
And thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.